Okay, so this section is talking about electron configuration, and apparently I forgot to put the learning targets in. But basically, what you're going to be able to do is look at how electrons are actually organized in those energy levels. And you're going to be able to kind of write out like a code that is explaining basically where they are located in the um, energy level. So there's going to be two videos that I'll post for this lesson. This one is just kind of quickly going through, walking through the POGL with you, and then I'll show a separate video where we're actually practicing writing out the configurations because that one's difficult for me to do on the computer. I have to do that on a different device. So the first thing we want to do, let me move me over to the side again, is just look at this kind of picture right here. So we have this little model of a boarding house. You can see that as the day goes on, so 1 p.m., 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we start to get a lot more boarders. So there's a lot more people that are needing to stay in the boarding house as time goes on. So we can kind of look and see what some of these symbols mean. So the first thing is, my line pin here. This little circle here, right, is the border. That's the person that's staying. This little ladder is the bunk bed. And then this little number set here is a manager's code. And so, what that manager's code is doing is it's telling us how many people are staying and where they're staying and which bed they're staying in or which room they're staying in. Okay, and kind of the bed. So let's look and see what are a couple things that we notice. So I'd like for you to pause here and then just take a minute to just look at how they're filling up, like the order that the bunkers are loading up the beds, and just see if there's a few things that you notice about it. Okay, so hopefully you have a few things that you've noticed. So a few things I notice is that it looks like um, we filled up this bottom room before they went to the top room, because I have a person in here before I started kind of adding to my second. And then it looked like the same thing with the second row. I filled up the whole second floor before I started moving to the third, which makes sense. It takes a lot more energy, right, to heat and cool a big boarding house. If I can just put everybody on the same floor, I don't have to worry about paying for utilities for the other floors or wasting that energy. I can just kind of have everybody in one spot. It also looks like they're putting people in like their own bed before they start going and adding someone to the top bunk, which is nice. I would prefer that if I was staying in a house. I would like to have my own bed if possible. So I would be grateful that they're putting, like here you can see these three people in their own bed before they went back and added that fourth person to the top bunk. Um, and then it looks like once they filled up that second floor, then they started going to the top floor. And it also looks like, again, just I guess to save energy, they're filling up this one room before they started adding to this other room over here. And then you can still see they're still loading up one person per bed in that room before going and adding to the top. Okay, so one of the questions on your POGL, I would probably pause here. Go ahead and answer the rest of the questions for Model 1. Part of what you're doing is kind of trying to figure out what these numbers mean in this manager's code. So go ahead and take a few minutes to finish that up. Okay, so let's take, let me make sure. So let's talk real quick just about what these numbers mean. Let's go ahead and mention that. So if you look here, right, I have one S1. Okay. Over here, I have one S2, two S2, and two P2. Well, if I'm trying to figure out what these numbers mean, it kind of looks like this first number in my code is the floor because this is one, and there's one person on the first floor. And then this has ones and twos, and they're using two floors. And then down here, once I've added a third floor, I have this three here. So it looks like the first number is really talking about my floors. And then the letter, I have a sunny room and a pink room. So I think the letter is designating which room they're in, S or P. And then that little number at the top, I'm pretty sure that's telling me how many people are in a room because this is 1S2. So there's two people in this S room. Over here, 2S2, there's two people in this room. And then 2P2, there's two people in this pink room. And I can double check because over here where it says 2P4, this is second floor, pink room, and it looks like there's four people. Okay, so that makes sense with my manager's code. So if I keep going, what we're going to do next is we're going to kind of apply this manager's code, this boarding house model to the actual Electron. So if you remember from earlier, we kind of talked about sorry, this is blurry, but it's okay. The step process of how to, how the atom was discovered, basically all the parts of the atom. So it started off with, we just thought it was, one particle. Then we realized there were actually some particles mixed in. And then we figured out the proton was in the center. And then here, now we're at kind of this Bohr's model where everything was circling right in these specific energy levels. And then this right here is where we're at now. So now we're at this, it's Schrodinger's model. Whoops. And he basically figured out that these electrons are not moving in this nice, beautiful solar system path. They're actually moving all these different directions. They're making these like figure eight motions. Some of them might be moving in a circle, but some of them are making these like weird looking figure eight. And then some of them are even weirder shape. We'll get to some pictures here in a few minutes. So everything's not quite as cookie cutter pretty as we would like. Here's some other of the shapes. So electron configuration is basically just the way that electrons are arranged in what we call orbitals that surround the nuclei of the atom. So the orbitals, that's the actual path that these electrons can take. And here you're just looking at, you can see all the different shapes. So this one looks like a clover. This one looks like just all kind of different directions. Okay, so they're very different. So you should have finished Model 1 a few minutes ago. So let's see if we can fill in some of these blanks. So it says the manager has strict rules. This is kind of some of the stuff we already talked about. So we're going to start filling up beds on the first floor. Boarders are only allowed to double up when all the bottom bunks are occupied. The next floor is filled up when all the bunks on the floor are occupied. And the pink room is only filled when the sunny room on that floor is occupied or filled up. So we went through all those together. So here, let me quickly just show you what or explain this image here, and then I want you to take a second to complete Model 2. So here is basically, we've taken our boarding house model. We have our first floor here. We have our sunny room, and we have our pink room. Here's our second floor, and then we have a third floor. Okay, and instead of borders, though, now we're adding electrons. Okay, so we still have this manager's code, 1S1, and instead of a person, now we're talking about an electron. So I have one electron in the first floor in the S room, or now we're going to refer to them as orbitals. Okay, so instead of a room, we're really calling them an orbital, and that's just kind of like the path that the electron will take. So you have several different elements here. Okay, and I believe your questions are specifically asking you about oxygen. Okay, so when you're answering the questions, you're looking at the oxygen section only for this. Okay, so pause here and take a minute to complete the model. Okay, so now that you've completed it, let's look over just a couple things. So we can see now, okay, that we're are these first numbers, those are our energy levels, right? What we call the sub levels, that's these S and P, okay, um, S and P, and then those are like the rooms. And then we have the actual number of electrons. Those are those exponent numbers. Okay. So I think this is model, oops, 2 still. So um, here, all right, we're trying to figure out which one is the correct way to write nitrogen, and it's just following the rules. So you should have gone through, I think, the rules already. Um, and we're going to kind of talk about them again here in a minute. Um, and on the notes page. So, first thing, let's just look and see if these are following our boarding house rules. So, it looks like each one of these, I have two borders in my 1S, my first floor S room. When I go up here, remember always want to fill up my sunny room before I go into my P room. So, did this one fill up my sunny room? No. So that one cannot be the right answer. Put a big X, okay? And it's because I haven't filled up this sunny room with my two borders yet. So let me go over here to this one, okay? Both of these have got my two borders in my sunny room, so that's right. And then the next one, remember, was talking about when I'm filling up my bunk beds, I want to just have one person in each bunk before I start adding, the second person on the top. So which one of these puts one person in each bunk? That would be this one right here. So B is the correct way. Whereas over here, we don't want these two people doubling up until we've got every bunk full. One of your questions asks about why you think, like, why this second floor in our actual orbital diagrams, second energy level or subshell is raised. Like, why is the P raised just a little bit more? And the reason is because it actually just requires a little bit more energy to keep that electron in that orbital. Because remember, we just finished talking about yesterday how those protons and electrons are attracted to each other, and the further apart those electrons get, the more energy it requires, right? Because I'm pulling it away from the proton. So here, this 2p, it actually requires a little bit more energy, because I think I have the picture. Yeah, if you look, an S is like a nice circle, and with the P, it actually kind of goes further away. The path is kind of further away from the nucleus, just by a little bit because of this odd shape. So it requires a little bit more energy for the electrons to actually be held in that orbital. So that's why the 3p is just a little bit higher. Um, so now I think um, now I'm going to stop here. That should have walked you through the POGL. If you still have questions about any of that, please let me know. Now you're going to need to look at the second video where I'll go through the notes. But that's I need to write to actually show you how to do the electron configuration. So this is the end of the notes for the POGL.